Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So we have a few things to cover today. I'm going to run through some of the usual, and then I'm going to turn it over to folks from the fire department as well as our building department. They're going to cover a couple different but probably similar related items. And we'll do a very quick Q&A after that if there's some kind of general questions. If you have a very specific or unique question about your particular project, this is not the time and place for that. So, because I've got some other stuff to run through after that. So we're going to do some very kind of quick Q&A after that. All right. So we've received over 170 conditional use permit applications, almost 160 business operating permits. There, by and large, is a fair amount of kind of overlap, although there are a number of addresses that do not have a business operating permit associated with them, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 50, give or take. BOPs, we've issued one, and we're about to issue probably beginning this week. I don't know, we got at least 12 or so that we'll get out this week, and then for those folks that are not operating, those will start kind of hopefully coming out at a fairly solid pace. Our registry for delivery ends at the end of the month. If you would like to get on it, if you are currently operating, this again only applies really to if you're currently operating on April 1st. We'll continue to take those applications, but at the end of the month, the registry closes. You need to apply for your conditional use permit and your business operations permit in order to make that qualification. Is this where I was going to invite Jeff up? I don't remember that being in there. Skip that one. Yep. So this is Jeff's slide. I'm going to bring up the fire department first. So if you could come on down.
Yeah, no problem. Jeff, you want to come up too? Okay, good afternoon. My name is Martin Hill. I'm with the Sacramento City Fire Department, and I I work as a supervisor in the new construction permitting and planning process. Today, what I wanted to talk to you folks about was we have some new codes that are coming out, and they're going to be effective July 1st of this year. Those codes are basically out of Chapter 38 as well as Chapter 53. 38 has to do with processing, and Chapter 53 actually has to do with the CO2 enrichment systems. So if you're putting in, one of the things that we're seeing a lot now in the planning division is there seems to be a lot of confusion about the codes and basically the process of how to get your equipment, how to get your business up and running, and have the fire department and building department approve it and get you through the process. So one of the things that I would recommend for anybody that out there right now that is in the middle of getting a building and trying to get up on their feet and running, because those are the questions we have, is the building sprinkled? Does it need to have sprinkler systems? Does it have to have a fire alarm system? Am I in the right area? This is such a new area for all of us, and what I will say is to get through the process the fastest with less issues and having second, third, fourth, fifth cycle plans coming back to you with more questions, and we can't seem to get on the same page. Is it would behoove anybody to get professionals on board, to get a licensed fire protection engineer on board. In the long run, it'll save you. It's a little bit of money up front, but when we go through the planning process, or we go through the plan review process, with a licensed fire protection engineer on board, it's going to speed up your process a lot, because they're already have gone through the codes. I want to talk a little bit about the CO2 enrichment as well. So one of the big issues that we have right now are the open flame CO2 burners. There really are no burners out here right now that are UL or listed and approved for indoor use. They're actually approved for those burners originally, and we've all done a lot of research on it. Those burners actually were used for greenhouses or something that actually has a lot of open air or a lot of open space, so that we don't get the CO2 accumulation. As far as that goes, in Chapter 53, when you go to submit your plans for some of your equipment, if it's extraction equipment or so forth, one of the most important things to do is get a professional on board. There's a 14-point list that we're going to ask for, and it has to do with every single piece of that machinery. There's nothing listed out there right now, but we're going to have to feel comfortable, or a licensed professional is going to have to feel comfortable listing that stuff. Well, not really listing it, but approving that stuff. And it's actually got to go before the fire marshal to get the approval on the equipment as well. So I guess my key point is try and get somebody on board that is a licensed professional, and it's going to help your process immensely. The new codes that are coming out are actually in effect July 1st. And like I was saying earlier, it's Chapter 53 and Chapter 38. Those are the two code requirements that have changed now in the 2016 Fire Code. It's important, if even today, I realize it's only March, but it's important that you follow those code requirements, because if you're going to be in business July 1st, those are something that the fire department on the annual basis are going to hold you to. Okay. So anyhow, that was pretty much what I just want to get out today. We're here. We're willing to work with you. You guys can call us on any of your questions. We're here to try and move this process along with you. So feel free to call us anytime, okay, if you have more questions.
Thank you, Captain. So, summarize some of that very technical stuff. If you're using CO2 burners inside of an indoor facility, it's not going to fly. This isn't our code. This is state building code that's been adopted up and down the state. It's going to have to be inline CO2 gas. The room's going to have a negative pressure on it, and it's going to have direct ventilation to the outside. Up next is Mr. Jeff Brooks of our building department to cover a few things.
Thanks, Joe. My name is Jeff Brooks. I'm with the Community Development Department, the Building Division. My role is I do plan review and also a lot of special projects. So anyway, what I wanted to do was just basically kind of, looks like we've got a mixed group here, so what I wanted to do was go over the building permit process. In case you're wondering, if you're operating a commercial cannabis business, or if you're thinking about operating one, you've gone through the CUP process, you're in the process of your your business operation permit, you absolutely need a building permit. There are no existing buildings that have a certificate of occupancy for commercial cultivation or manufacturing of cannabis. So just wanted to get that out right away. So if you're thinking, oh, hey, my facility's existing, it is not existing in a legal sense. So anyway, I'm just going to go through the process, give a general overview. First thing I want to do is tag on to Marty Hill. His recommendation is to, and more of a recommendation, it's more than a recommendation, it's actually required that you hire a licensed design professional, licensed architect or licensed engineer. If you've got a friend that's got a CAD program that's drawing plans and knows an engineer that'll stamp his plans, I'm sorry, but that is not legal under the Business and Professions Code. You must be working under direct supervision under that licensed professional. So if you're in the process of obtaining your CUP, you can submit for a building permit. We actually are recommending that you submit. We can review it concurrently during the CUP process. And that will prevent delays when it comes time when you get your CUP approved and you get your business operations permit approved. That'll give you, you won't be in such a hurry. Your permit will be ready to go. So as far as submitting, you're going to need to provide a complete set of plans with supplemental documents that may include structural calculations and that type of stuff. You're going to need architectural plans, structural plans, mechanical plans that deal with the ventilation, plumbing plans, likely to have some backflow issues that we need to protect the city water system and the building water system from getting contaminated. Electrical, we all know there's a lot of electrical in these facilities to run all the HVAC, all the lighting. You're going to need fire plans. That includes fire sprinkler and fire alarm if the building has fire sprinklers and fire alarm. And then for the cultivation facilities, you're going to need a CO2 enrichment, piping, and detection plan. And that'll include everything that's required in Section 5307 of the California Fire Code. Those regulations are new regulations. Don't technically go into effect until July 1st. We don't have any codes other than those, so we are looking at those when we're reviewing plans. So The new supplement to the fire code is out there. It's on the Building Standards Commission website. So I recommend that you go there under their codes page, and it is available. Let's see. So supplemental documents may include structural calculations, your energy compliance documents. You are required to comply with the California Energy Code regarding the lighting, envelope, HVAC. If you're doing a CO2 system, if you're doing cultivation, we want a summary of how the system works, along with cut sheets for valves and sensors, detectors, panels, that kind of stuff. If you're doing manufacturing, we're going to need a summary of your operation, of how the extraction process works, what type of chemicals you're using and that kind of stuff. And you'll need a technical report, the 14-point report on that equipment. And that'll include not only the piece of equipment, but it's also your standard operating procedures. In case of an emergency, what do we do? And that's what that report will include. It's very important for employee safety. Interview. So you submit your plans. We take them in. We require several sets of plans depending on the type of whether it's an existing building or a new building. If you're doing a new building, you're going to need 9 sets. If you've got an existing building, you're going to need approximately 6 sets of plans. And that's so that we can distribute it out to all the different disciplines and the different agencies that need to take a look at that. That will go out and be reviewed by each discipline. The timelines are typically 3 to 4 weeks per cycle. We'll do a review. If there's corrections, we'll send the corrections during that first 3 to 4 weeks. The 3 to 4 weeks, it depends on the valuation. So it could be 3 or 4 weeks. Once your designers, they get the corrections, they'll make the corrections, they'll resubmit, and then it's usually the subsequent cycles are typically shorter, so you're probably looking at 2 to 3 weeks after that. Expedited plan review is available on a case-by-case basis. We're probably going to look at how complicated your project is and kind of decide there. We are very busy right now, and so it does impact staff when we have to expedite it. Inspections are going to be the same as any other type of project. You frame your walls, you put in your electrical before you cover any of that up, you call for your inspections, no different than any other type of project. CO2 systems, I think we're looking at requiring third-party inspections on those. So that can be quite time-consuming, to check all the. It could be quite intensive as far as checking everything. So the fire department does not have time to do that. So we're going to require third-party inspections on that. Once your inspections are all complete, everything's been approved, you get your final approval, you can get a certificate of occupancy. That there's no charge for that. It's just you have to come down to the counter, request it, and then they just will print you out one. Temporary certificate of occupancy, if you've got a phased project or you're really close to being ready, there's no safety issues, then the inspectors will approve you for a temporary certificate of occupancy. You will need to request that from the inspectors. Once they approve that, then you would go down to the building community development building department counter and request a temporary C of O. Those typically take a few days to issue. We have to look through the records and make sure that everything is up to date, that everything's been approved, and there's nothing left out there, kind of hanging out there. So as long as it's safe, we'll issue that. The price on those is $485. They're good for 60 days, and we will issue one extension at the end of 60 days. After that, after the end of the second 60 days, if you still need to continue with a temporary certificate of occupancy, you'll have to reapply, and it's be charged another $485, and it's the same process. So that's pretty much it. We're here to answer questions, and we're trying to help everybody with information to get through the system. That's our goal, is to help you get through this as quickly and as painlessly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So hold on, don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Jeff. Captain. Nope, you too, Captain. Like, are there any questions for these two gentlemen? Oh, you guys got off easy too. All right. 3.
Anybody on this side? Of course.
The 14-point list, that's in Chapter 53. I'm going to be able to find that real easy.
Yeah, so basically what that is if you're, because there really is no listed equipment right now, ULFM, so forth, listed.
There's no UL listed CO2 extraction machines? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, right, yeah. That's for the extraction equipment. Or the CO2.
No, I'm talking about a closed-loop CO2 extraction machine. I'm confused because you're going between the CO2 burners
Right.
and CO2 extraction machines, two
Correct.
different entities. So,
Absolutely.
so
So if we're using a CO2 closed loop, then it doesn't apply. Is that correct?
Wait for the microphones to speak, because otherwise we don't grab it on the mic. It's fine, and we just, otherwise we can't grab it on the recording. So we try to capture everything, so.
Okay, so it still has to be approved by us.
okay, because there are UL listed extraction machines, just so you know.
Okay.
We have yet to see one.
Anthony.
Hi, Anthony Vasquez. My question is on pre-registered buildings, and they're already operating and have the as-built environment. Will their condition or their occupancy certificates be expedited because they're already up and running, or?
No.
So you are,
A registered cultivator.
so it doesn't matter registered or not, you still have to go through the same building permit process as any other business would. We'll do what we can to help you through the process, but if your as-built do not meet the 26, or the California Building Code, or California Building, Mechanical, Plumbing, the whole list of them, if they don't meet the current code, you will have to bring it up to code.
And I think that timeline is going to be more dependent upon what's built and how accurate the plans are, not non-operating cultivation facility being in front of you, so to speak.
Right, so as long as everything's up to code and up to standard, then the occupancy permit should come quite a bit quicker than, huh? All right, thank you.
Hi. If the only thing holding up the certificate of occupancy is the SMUD power upgrade that our site is waiting for, can we get the temporary certificate of occupancy fairly easily? I mean, if it's only the power upgrade, we've been registered and we've been running for a while now, and the only thing when we're coming to get up to code is to get a higher power transformer, but we've been running with the lower power. Can we run at the lower power rate with the temporary and then get the upgrade and then apply for the permanent certificate?
Yeah, that's kind of a complicated question, and I would talk to your electrical engineer, designer, or contractor, and it's pretty technical. I don't know if we can answer that here. You'd need to talk to your electrical engineer to.
I mean, my question is because we're kind of going in a phased production, as you talked about. So it's like
Right.
we're running half the facility. We're going to wait for the power upgrade, and then we're going to build out the remainder for the full.
Okay, yeah, I got it now. Okay, so if the existing portion, meets the code and has been inspected and approved, and the inspectors write you okay for a temp certificate of occupancy, then you could apply for a temporary certificate of occupancy.
Okay. And even though the other side of the building is going to require work, for instance, like walls and electrical.
Yeah, I mean, mainly you just need to make sure that you've got everything for that area done and it's safe, and there's going to be nothing else that's going to create a safety issue. In other words, if you're going to be doing more construction work in the same area of where you're doing other operations, you have to consider your employee safety versus, separate them from the construction.
No problem.
Can you explain when a fire suppression system is required to be installed or not?
Sure. When it's required. So there's a handful of things that go into that. It's what type of building that you have, what the occupancy use was prior to, if it's an existing building. If you were if the building was a B or an E, say, and you're going to ramp it up to an F1, we're certainly going to look at the requirements for sprinkling the building, because it is a change of occupancy. It's really a broad question. It's certainly something that we could take a look at on a case-by-case basis. What I do see is if you are leasing or buying a building that has a sprinkler system in it right now, or an ESFR building, some of the big box buildings that are already built, you're pretty safe. If this is something that used to be kindergarten, and you're going to turn it into a marijuana grow, or whatever the operation is that you want to do with it, that very well may require sprinklers.
What about for like a non-production facility, like non-storefront delivery, for instance?
Once again, we'd have to look at the hazardous materials. If you have hazardous materials on it, a lot of fire sprinklers are driven by a lot of different things. So I think really, so that I'm not speaking broadly, I think it's got to be a case-by-case basis. If you want to bring your plans to us, we can certainly take a look at it and give you some further information.
Thanks.
But
Hi, my name is Carlos Ballesteros with Sierra Organics. And in your requirements for delivery-only cannabis dispensary site buildings, number D, transport area. Each building with a restricted area must have an area designed for the secure transfer of cannabis and so forth. What if your building does not have a restricted area?
oh, this is a great segue.
All right, and we'll get to that later. That's really, I wish Sergeant Juan was here to kind of go into that in detail. But if it doesn't have a secure area for doing the transfer of cannabis, it may not be an appropriate place to do it.
Nobody else has questions for the fire
So,
department?
anything else for these two gentlemen?
Restricted area. Not secure, it says restricted. So,
Again, not every building is going to be appropriate for cannabis use, period, right? So, choose wisely. Anything more for these two gentlemen?
Okay, 1, 2, okay. 2 more. Crossing you. She's gonna come.
Shelby Lucero with Greenway Commerce. I have a question. A client wants to know how much ethanol they can have on their site. Is that break it down to, and this is for non-volatile extraction?
Go ahead.
So I'll just cover and then you can add them. Sure. So there's a table, and I don't know the exact table number, Chapter 3 of the California Building Code, and that basically dictates the allowable quantities of hazardous materials that you can have without being a hazardous occupancy. I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say it's 30 gallons of ethanol, and that's without classifying a hazardous area and with the other things that kick in with that.
Absolutely, and it does. A lot of it is based off the occupancy that you've chosen for that building. I mean, if it's an F1, it's a certain quantity. If it becomes an H, then the quantity actually goes up.
So what was F1 and H?
Yeah, F1 is factory. H stands for hazardous.
Oh, I see.
So that's the way the occupancies are identified in the code.
And do you have limits for F1 and H?
Yeah, right off the top of my head, I don't.
No,
I don't. But yeah, at Chapter 3, there is a table, and it's a pretty easy table to read down. We could get you that information if you want to call us.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And I've got some handouts that I'll leave. I've only got about 50 of them, but I'll leave them out on the table. Some of you might already have it. It's the CDD Form 420, and it's actually got a new checklist on it. And I'll leave some of my cards along with it in case you have any follow-up questions.
Yeah, one last question.
All right, so we have a facility up in Plumas County, not Sacramento, but we did bring in a fire expert, and they said any building over 5,000 square feet under California Fire Code, change of use or change of occupancy would require fire sprinkler system to be put in. So, I'm just wondering, how are you dealing with buildings that are under 5,000 square feet? Are you saying that if you use it for a mobile delivery service, that's going to be a change of use, therefore you're going to have to put in fire sprinkler even though it's not over 5,000 square feet? Or what's your general position regarding on buildings that are below 5,000, and how are you viewing that?
Well, so the Sacramento City Fire Department and Building Department here have our own local amendments. What exactly, I mean, I guess I want to know what you're looking to put in the building.
Well, let's say I want to get a building, 3,500 square feet, 4,000 square feet. I want to have a smoke and bake shop attached to it, walled off on a Chinese wall, and also have a mobile delivery service. So let's say I have a mobile delivery service, 1,000 square feet. I mean, how is the fire department going to view that regarding the inventory? Is that considered a hazardous material? Is it flammable? Are you going to have a fire suppression system in there, even though that particular space is less than 1,000 square feet? It could be considered a change of use.
Well, I mean, we have seen some vape shops that are Bs, so it's all according to what the classification of the shop is, to be honest with you. I mean, you could be a business mercantile, you could be an F1. I mean, we'd certainly have to take a look at what your materials are that you have listed that you want to keep in there. Also, I mean, mobile delivery service, you say, are all your mobile vans outside, or you're parking something inside? Because that itself triggers sprinklers, or maybe it doesn't trigger sprinklers. It's kind of once again, it's more of a case-by-case basis. We'd like to see your plans. Some of the stuff is very general, and I don't want to steer you in the wrong direction.
Right. No, I'm more concerned about the dried marijuana. Let's say I want to have 50 pounds sitting in the mobile delivery service, treated as almost like a little mini warehouse. Is that going to require fire sprinklers because it's a flammable material?
I honestly can't answer that at this time.
Yeah, just to comment on that, the ordinance says that existing buildings is over 3,599, 3,600 square feet is really the trigger. The fire department may require sprinklers if the new use is a greater hazard than the previous use, and that's kind of what they base it on. So.
Right. Yeah, we look at all different aspects. I mean, you may have high pile storage within this. I mean, you may be storing plastics or whatever those commodities are that become a higher hazard. So, like I said, I mean, without seeing a set of plans or getting a more than just a general idea, it's hard to tell you, but we could on a case-by-case basis. Okay.
Yeah, what may end up happening is you don't have to sprinkler it, but you have to put in a 2-hour firewall. There's things in the code that, tables in the code that for when it's sprinklered versus when it's not sprinklered. And typically when it's not sprinklered, that's when you're starting to build a bunch of firewalls.
All right. So far, if you go to Cannabis Media, there's been 18 licenses have been approved that the groups for mobile delivery services have actually applied to the state of California. So they must have got some conditional use permit and also an operating permit. So once again, if they're a mobile delivery service, they have cannabis on site. What is the fire department or what did they go through to get that approval, depending upon the product that they have on site?
So I think we've gone way beyond kind of just the general. Anything else about sprinklers or CO2? Going once, going twice. So thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. My takeaway was hire a professional and plan on putting in sprinklers. They're making, I have to put them in. All right. Veterans fee exemption. Our form is now up on our website per state B&P code. In order to take advantage of this, our attorneys have to have opined that it needs to be entirely owned, as such as a sole proprietor. But under state B&P code, you are entitled to a fee waiver. So please, someone come and be the first. You still need everything else still applies, right? You still need to submit an application, still need to get a CUP. Nurseries. If you would like to operate a nursery, we're now going to kind of do this administratively. You still need the conditional use permit for cultivation, or it's under the production CUP. But we're going to take applications for nurseries under the Class A cultivation permit. So there you go. A few things coming to council: the commercial penalty for growing without a permit for anything over 6, as well as butane being sold in excess of 600 milliliters. We have distribution coming to the council as well. We're removing our I'll call it artificial square footage cap in there, so it's going to mirror the state in terms of how it works. So self-distribution, distribution, as well as we're going to be adding a transport only permit. We're also going to be doing moving forward with the micro business, at least as in terms of a starting point for conversation with the policy committee, April 10th, right? April 10th. Someone that knows what they're talking about is shaking their head. So, yeah. So self-distribution. If you're a cultivator or a manufacturer and you wish to perform the functions of a distributor and want to do it on behalf of yourself, you can get a self-distribution permit, kind of in the vertically integrating yourself one more degree, and perform those functions. That those administrative privileges that only a distributor has.
Is
Is that really a question? Come on. Come on. You're cut off. All right. I need everyone to reach under seats and pull out the plastic cap that's been provided for you and place it on top of your heads so no gray matter is is put into the council chambers. I'm not a tax attorney. I've read the stuff. I've checked it. I believe I understand it. And it's unfortunate that it's really complicated. If you haven't sat through and read through the CDTFA's website and clicked through all of it, you should definitely do so. You should definitely also, if you still have questions, go out and hire the correct tax attorney, CPA. Although I talked to a number of CPAs and have gotten some different answers. But here we go. So, things you need to do. If you're a cannabis business, you need to make sure that you are go and get your seller's permit. You need to be collecting all the taxes from your customers and electronically remit those. The big thing is here, you pay the cannabis excise tax that is due to your distributor. Do not remit it to the state on your tax returns. Right? Does everyone get that? You repay that excise tax to the distributor. The sales tax you pay to the state, but the excise tax you remit to your distributor. And then for retailers, you need to make sure that you're including on your invoice that that the excise tax is included in the purchase price amount, because it is technically the customer is paying this excise tax. You're collecting it on their behalf and remitting it to your distributor, and essentially kind of getting reimbursed along the way from your customer. But the customer ultimately is paying for the excise tax. May not feel that way, but they are. And here's where it gets fun. So there are two different ways to calculate the excise tax that is due. It depends if it's an arm's length or non-arm's length transaction. Does everyone know what an arm's length transaction is? Between two independent businesses, it's an assumption that this trade is made upon the open market. A non-arm's length transaction is, for example, between a micro business or between a cultivator and a retailer that is owned by the same person. That is a non-arm's length transaction. I sell to myself, basically. The 15% excise tax, again, is included in it and is calculated based on the average market price. Now, the average market price is determined by the CDTFA, and if it is an arm's length transaction, right now the CDTFA assumes a 60% markup. So, if it is a non-arm's length we can get to that later. In an arm's length transaction, the average market price is the wholesale cost of the cannabis products sold and or transferred to a cultivator, manufacturer, or distributor to a cannabis retailer, plus a markup determined by a CDTFA. The CDTFA is going to adjust this potentially every 6 months. Right now, it is 60% assumed markup price. So how does this work? If you're a retailer and if you buy a pound of cannabis for $1,500, that's assuming any fee that the distributor adds on to it. CDTFA is assuming that you're going to sell that cannabis for $2,400. You may sell it for more, and your books don't need to align with your distributor, but they are assuming that you're going to sell that cannabis for $2,400. The excise tax due to your retailer at that time is 15% of that $2,400, i.e., $360. You pay that to your retailer. So if you purchase a pound of cannabis for $1,500 plus the tax, you pay the distributor $1,860. Your distributor then remits that amount of money to the state. Again, that is an arm's length transaction. Non-arm's length transaction, again, is between two businesses that are owned or controlled by the same entity. and essentially selling it to yourself. And what this is done for, it was to make sure that the state basically gets their money. So I couldn't cultivate and sell it to myself for $100 a pound and pay the 15% based on that $100 a pound that I'm claiming. It's a non-arm's length transaction, and the state has then placed the burden on the retailer that you're going to collect it at the point of sale, right? So you take that same pound of cannabis, and the retailer sells that same pound of cannabis for $3,000 as opposed to $2,400. The tax is 15% of that $3,000 or $450. Again, the price is built into the retail sale price. So even if you're selling it for $35, that tax, depending on the type of transaction, it needs to be built into the price. So it's not applied after the point of sale. Existing inventory. This is where you should probably seek a little bit more clarity. I will tell you that I don't believe that is perfectly clear. People, I'd be interested if anyone has a different opinion. But your existing inventory, if you're a retailer and you have existing inventory, you owe tax on that inventory. You owe tax on it to a distributor that you have a relationship with. Really, you get to pick one. And where I think it is less clear is whether or not you have to account for that 15% excise tax at the point of sale and treat it as a non-arm's length transaction, or can you assume a 60% markup rate at the cost of which you purchased the goods and treat those as a non-arm's length transaction? Read it for yourself. It's not. I don't think it says very clearly one way or the other. You may be able to treat them accordingly. And if it's a non-arm's length transaction, you might be able to assume that 60% markup rate. Well, it sounds like a non-arm's length transaction.
Sorry, it's against policy. We have to have everything in reporting.
Anthony, I'm telling you, you can take that up with the state. I'm just telling you what I read. But it's very clear that existing inventory is taxed. I'm just, don't shoot the bear bad news.
At the end, everybody, remember that.
So computing sales tax right now in Sacramento is 8.5%. That sales tax is applied to after the purchase price. In this example, it's a $35 purchase price. The excise tax is built into that $35. So the sale price would be $87.89. So I made an attempt at this is my attempt at explaining the real world kind of example in all of this. So again, that $1,500 pound of cannabis in an arm's length transaction is assumed value of $2,400. The distributor is paid $18.60. Sale price. The sale price is $35. Calculated the tax. So basically, the tax per eighth, that $360 in excise tax paid, divided by 128, which is how many eighths are in a pound. Basically, there's $2.81 of excise tax in that eighth, based on a $2,400 assumed markup rate, $1,500 purchase price, $360 in tax, assumed markup rate of 60%, and there's $2.81 in every eighth of cannabis. Everyone kind of tracking with that one? So 35 times 8.25, again, $37.89. Then you take, so if you add all the taxes up, the $281 in sales tax and the $281 in excise tax and the $289 in sales tax, on that $37.89, the state is collecting $5.70. So here's where it gets really fun for everybody. The state has asked that you remit that 15% directly to them, and that it's counted as part of your gross receipts. Right? So that $100 sale is part of your $100 sale. The sales tax you automatically back out. But for the purposes of calculating your 4% business operations tax, we're not going to require you to pay tax on your gross receipts on top of the 15% excise tax. So you have to, if you want to, back out the excise tax paid in order to calculate what is your ultimate gross receipts and in order to calculate your 4% business operations tax owed to the city. It's going to be an accounting nightmare. So again, there's just kind of my quick math at the bottom. You know, if the sale price is $35, you back out the $2.81 minus the $1.29. That's what I calculated. The 4% business operations tax equals $30.90. The purchase price in that example was $14.53. And here's the same thing for a non-arm's length transaction. You'll notice that in a non-arm's length transaction, that excise tax, because it's based on the sale price and not the wholesale plus an assumed markup, is significantly higher, or at least can be. I guess it ultimately depends on what you purchase the cannabis for. Yeah. But in this example, the excise tax is $5.25 as opposed to the $2.81. So it does get up there. Cultivator pays the distributor. This is basically kind of the flow of taxes and how they work. The distributor is really the gatekeeper to all of this. The cultivation tax is passed along from the cultivator to the manufacturer to the distributor, kind of along the way until it enters the market, until it enters the retail market anyway. If you're passing it from a manufacturer to a manufacturer, such as an oil extract to the proverbial, brownie maker, you also pass along that cultivation tax to the next manufacturer. All right. Who wrote that? All right. All right, seeing no questions.
And just by the way, sorry the PowerPoint was a little hard to read. We upload all of these to our website. So City of Sacramento Cannabis, then go to Business Services, Stakeholders, PowerPoints are all there.
So again, full disclosure, I'm not a tax attorney. I hope I had made an attempt to kind of explain that. It's kind of very complicated subject matter. I had to spend a day and a half reading and rereading this stuff to understand it, and yeah.
Okay, first question already?
What's going on? So just, I got a couple questions. Based on that last slide there, that's not going to include the transport only if approved, right?
The transport only what?
Distributor. Because the distributor will eventually take it to the distributor transport only will eventually take it to a distributor.
The transport only doesn't have the administrative privileges of collecting taxes.
I wanted to clarify that.
Point A to point B.
Based on what you're saying may be approved for the CUP, how does that affect the BOP process?
Say it again.
What the committee, because as I understood that slide, the committee is going to vote on the transport only not having to go through the CUP process, correct?
Correct. Well, yeah. So what we'll bring forward is, so there's a scenario in which a cannabis distributor who is transport only, who again doesn't take title or of any cannabis, is potentially in a scenario where they're not going to be storing any cannabis on site where they may be storing their vehicles. So under that scenario, what we're going to be discussing with the committee is the need for a conditional use permit, should they not, be storing cannabis on site.
I guess it's more of a hypothetical then, but if it were to pass, how would that affect the BOP process? We just go directly to submitting for the BOP?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for trying on all this. Appreciate it. I want to ask a couple questions about local tax, so the 4%. I just want to make sure that it's clear that it's 4% for each business unit. So if it's a grower in Sacramento that then feeds a manufacturer in Sacramento, that then feeds a distribution center in Sacramento, that then feeds a retailer in Sacramento, we're talking about a grand total of 16% tax on that item, correct? And was that the intention of the regulation that was written, or have we possibly overlooked something that might be?
Yeah, I don't want to speculate as to the intent. It was adopted by the voters in 2010 when we had cannabis dispensaries, and I think at the time that it was written or proposed to the voter, I think it was difficult for everybody to kind of look around the corner on this stuff. And as it's written, it applies to cannabis businesses. So yeah, that's kind of how it is. And in order to change it, it needs to go back out to the ballot.
Yeah, okay. So it has to go to the voters. Okay. And then if something is being manufactured and distributed under the same license, would that be just the 4%, or is it still twice?
Let me get back to you on that one. Brad's not here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Can you go back to the slide talking about the veteran program or the veteran application process? Okay, appreciate it. I'm trying to see in the law, I mean, maybe I'm just missing it. I mean, it's possible. But I don't see anything about sole proprietorship. It says every and whatsoever without cost. And so I'm just trying to understand how we're getting to yes here.
How we're getting to yes?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you told me last time. You were getting to yes to take care of veterans and make sure they're taken care of without increasing the barriers that were being created.
Well,
and I see additional barriers because you're only allowing for one type of business model in order to operate in that space. And I draw attention to the fact that you would never say a woman-owned business had to be 100%. Never. That's a protected class, the same way veterans are. So I would like to just know how you got to the point where it was sole proprietorship, if you could like to.
Okay. So first, I think you're kind of merging a couple different things here. Owned is classified and defined a number of different ways regarding statute. In this particular case, the case law around this is Santa Clara v. I can't remember whom.
Brooks v. Santa Clara, 1987.
Right, and so in this case, this was in fact a veteran selling nuts, right? Who was doing so without a vendor's license or vendor's permit. Yes. And so it is our council's determination that this exemption for a fee, which is what this is, an exemption for a fee, applies to individuals and not corporations.
Okay, so see, it says every soldier, sailor, Marine of the United States who has received honorable discharge or released from active duty under honorable conditions from such service may hawk, peddle, and vend any goods, wares, or merchandise owned by him, except in spirituous, malt, Venus, or other intoxicating liquor, without payment of any license, tax, or fee whatsoever, whether municipal, county, or state, and the Board of Supervisors shall issue to such soldier, sailor, or Marine without cost of license, therefore. That's Business and Professions Code 16102. That's not Brooks v. County of Santa Clara. That's the law that Brooks v. County County of Santa Clara was confirming and clarifying in their secondary source of law, which is case law, but the primary source of law here is a statute that's been on the books since 1901 and last amended in 1941. That's why Air Force is not even
Right.
because
And
Air
this,
Force was
and this complies with that, and whether you feel it should extend to
okay.
corporation.
Well, let's say I guess we'll have to find out the hard way. Right.
So,
Joe, my question is similar to his. I'm a veteran, and last time we was here, you said that the labs may not be exempted because they provided a service. Is that still true?
Still
or will
true.
labs be exempted?
still true. Yeah, it's because it's a service, not a selling of a good or ware.
Did you have a question on your side?
Yes, right here, Kenneth Bronze. I was just wondering, kind of piggybacking off of his question, the lingo says by a veteran, and it says that, if I remember correctly, that the proceeds of the company must benefit a veteran. What about a group of veterans owning the company?
It's not around benefit, it's around ownership.
Ownership.
I mean, that's what he's asking.
Yes, if we own, like,
Right.
my
Right.
buddy and I right here, we own a company 50%, and would we apply for that? Would we qualify for that fee exemption?
No.
No.
So again, I'm, this isn't my interpretation of it. I'm certainly open to having that discussion. It's where our city attorneys have landed. So.
I think the taxes aren't the problem as long as the money's going to be used in the right areas, which I think taxes are going to be good. It's going to put things back in place, right? Hopefully. I hope it's not going to be just big trips for corporate people. Micro farming, have you guys got anywhere with residential, like permits by any chance?
With residential?
Well, I know you had to have a commercial permit, but if you own your house, you got your house, you want to turn the garage into a nice
6 plants.
That's what I was going to. Is there a permit? Maybe we can go above that, or no limit on the plants as long as it's in the right square footage.
I don't set the policy. That's a council. But you
there-
want me to look into my crystal ball, and I don't see that one.
Or at least
Magic
for
8
certain
Ball
people,
says,
is there ways?
ask
like,
again later.
Like the veterans, is there ways to maybe show track record? Hey, I've been working under my 99 plant license, and maybe I've been working with a big commercial farm, and I'm doing breeding. I'm not even flowering, because the flowering, from what I see, a lot of it goes into taxes, so you don't really make money unless it's in a big level commercial, which I doubt everybody in here has a commercial permit in order. Because I can't wait, but I don't have the money or the funds, and I've been waiting to do it under the 99, thinking it's going to be now officially legal, but we can't even do anything under 99. So I've been waiting patiently, not complaining, but to work with a dispensary legally and actually pay my taxes instead of, how it is. I don't know how it is, but how it's been. Everybody made their money. Entertainment was probably amazing. Long story short, we want to own houses. We want to have mortgages. We want to show on paper. I want to pay my house off. $60,000 loan, easy to pay off if I get into this business legally on a residential level. I can make 6 digits, easy. Not $1 million on a commercial farm permit or warehouse.
Yeah, please don't do that.
I'm glad we're all laughing because I'm a businessman. The question is residential. Please think about it.
My answer is please don't.
Why? Why can't we make any money residential? What about 6 plants? I'm not done. What about the 6? Excuse me. What about the 6 plants? Is it outdoor? Is this 6 plants?
It's in 6 plants, indoor only, and that's where I see it staying for some amount of time. I mean,
and just flower or all roots? 6 roots?
6 plants. Yeah, you can. If you would like to know how serious the city of Sacramento is about illegal residential cultivation, you can go ask the person whose arraignment was an hour and a half ago, who was denied bail. Like, I don't tell you, I mean, we have about 800, 600, maybe 800 of these in the city of Sacramento, And the city attorney's office and the Sacramento Police Department are taking them very seriously. We don't want cultivation taking place in our neighborhoods. It needs to belong in a commercial cultivation facility in a commercial and industrial area. Period.
I had a question about the equity program, and I don't want to compare it to the veterans exemption, but do you want those people to register with the state of California as minorities?
That's a good question. I don't know if that's going to be necessary for the implementation of our program.
If we turn in our application across the counter, how are they going to know those people are part of the equity program?
How will whom, the state?
The state and the city of Sacramento.
Well, so we're finishing up the study that we needed to complete for the release of the RFP, and then that will essentially launch the program, and participants are going to have to kind of go through this program to receive those benefits, such as waiving of fees and everything else. So we will know who they are.
And will the RFP be complete by the time that these people want to enter their application in for delivery? The end of the month?
Well, that depends on when they want to. No, because the RFP hasn't been released yet.
Okay. So if I have people that want to be a part of the equity program, that want to be in the delivery service, how should we submit their application for their conditional use permit and their business operations permit?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again? How should they submit it?
How should they submit it, or if they are going to have their fees waived, let's say, if you should say that they qualify, how would we know if they wanted to be a part of the equity program and have a delivery service?
I mean, I guess they could either apply and pay the fee, or we could probably talk about somehow accepting the application without the fee, contingent upon some other things. I mean, I think we could sort some of that out.
Okay, thank you. I just know the deadline's approaching, and I didn't want anybody to miss out on the opportunity.
Yeah, again, the deadline is for those folks that are doing this currently and operating. If you're not operating, the registry doesn't kind of impact one whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
My question concerns the establishment of the retail price by either the city or the state.
State. CDTFA. Every 6 months is going to calculate the average markup rate based on an arm's length transaction. Right now, it is assumed that it's a 60% markup rate. They may adjust that in July.
So the process will be based on the results of people turning in their taxes and their figures, and that's how they'll do it.
It's remitted to the distributor at the time of the sale. So you are essentially, as a retailer, fronting the tax owed on behalf of your future customer. So you buy that pound of cannabis for $1,500. The state assumes that you're going to sell it for $24. You're going to remit $360 in addition to the $1,500 that you paid for it. You're essentially fronting the line of customers behind you, and then you're going to collect that tax during the point of sale.
That part I understand. I'm not asking my question well.
Okay.
Take another swing. I'm looking to see if it'll go down, or will it go up? And what's it based on? What's the rise or the fall going to be based on? Actual returns of sales or projected? What's the process?
How are they going to calculate the 60% assumed markup rate? That one I don't know. Got me. There's probably a number of ways that they'll calculate it. There's a lot of variables that probably should go into that, including like the relative price of cannabis, because that markup rate may have to, ultimately increase depending on the price of cannabis.
I get the feeling it won't go down.
Yeah, when was the last time somebody lowered your taxes, right? Although there is a bill in the legislature to lower the tax from 15% to 11% and eliminate the cultivation tax for a period of 3 years, the city has signed on as a supporter of that bill. So,
Hi, Joe. Could you touch on the butane at the point of sale? You said there was a 1 liter limit.
yeah, so we're going to prohibit sorry, help me out here. Prohibit the sale of basically those butane canisters in excess of 600 milliliters.
So it's not the finished product then? You're saying the canisters?
Correct.
So this
the
is
canisters of butane. People coming in and basically this is this is an attempt to mitigate or make it more difficult for the person attempting home extraction.
Gotcha. All right. That's my only question. Thank you.
Miss Knott.
Hi, Joe. 3 questions. One on processing, one on taxes, and one on delivery. Which do you want first?
Fire away.
Okay.
7.
No. Processing. Zara gave me what I think is a great answer. I just want to clarify. There is a processor license at the state level that says you can package flour, you can label it, for a lot of folks doing white labeling, all that kind of fun stuff. And the city doesn't have a similar license. Will that be covered under the cultivation license the way that the nurseries are? And when we go for our state license, will the city say yes, the processing is okay? How are we going to work
help
that?
me with this. We're going to be going. We're going to be going back and confirming that's an activity permitted under either cultivation or kind of like a type P manufacturer or manufacturing.
Okay.
Anything?
Any timeline on that?
We won't be your holdup.
Oh, okay, cool. That works. You will not be our holdup.
Yeah.
Second question on taxes. On the city's excise tax, I know that the city council, there's a range on it. I believe it's from 4 to 10%. And by resolution, the voters have given the city council the right to raise it. Does the city council have the same opportunity to lower it by resolution? And is that something you guys could look into? To deal with the
city's excise tax?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have an excise tax.
I'm sorry, the
gross receipts
the
tax.
4% gross receipts tax. I know the council can.
I didn't
raise
think it
in
had a
increments.
range.
It does have a range.
Does it have a range?
Yes. It does have a range.
So we're at the bottom of that range. I'm not sure we could lower it.
Well, we don't know. I'm just asking if it's something that
I'll
can be looked at to avoid that 16% that we're looking at.
I like it, and maybe I mean, like I get it in terms of like the layering of the taxes and all of this. Like I've run the math.
Yeah.
And it's let me have that conversation because I think it's certainly worthy of a conversation. I honestly. Thank you. You guys have taught me something.
Cool. Thank you.
About my own code. How about that?
Look at us. We're working together well, finally.
I should have really have known that. I really should have.
And here comes the zinger. No. I'm just curious on, obviously, folks who are doing retail have some concerns about delivery. And I'm sure that the delivery registry was based on the concept that we did with the cultivation registry. The only difference is, as of January 1st, the folks in the cultivation registry were okay until they got to a point where we had to all go ahead and only do license-to-license businesses. The delivery businesses are still not a lot of them aren't connected to a brick and mortar. How is the city doing that registry when we know they're acting outside the law at this point? That's a confusion to my clients, and they feel it's unfair competition. And so if you're currently operating, as of April, you've been operating illegally for as long as you've been operating illegally, and doesn't that put the city at risk by allowing an avenue for folks to continue to operate illegally before we create something that's may or may not work. And that's just a concern of mine as a resident and having clients who are doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of risk in all of this, including, the feds come marching in. And so risk, yes, and from where and how much, because it's a lot to go around and there's plenty of it. In terms of knowing what they're doing, I think that is an assumption. I think we've attempted to create a pathway for them to enter the legal marketplace. If they have a temporary state license, they need to be doing businesses with other cannabis businesses that have a temporary state license and following those rules no differently. They need to have applied for their conditional use permit and have submitted their business applications permit. And we expect that they are following.
And that they have to be attached to a brick and mortar in the city of Sacramento or
they
somewhere?
do. Absolutely. And the truth is it's going to be a process. It's going to be a process for all of this. I mean, the registered cultivators in the room, yeah, I'd love to, give you, a business operations permit, but the truth is that you've got tons of unpermitted work, and it makes their building department rip out their hair just thinking about it. And we need to get you all through the building permit process and get a certificate of occupancy. And we're going to do that before we issue a business operations permit because, well, we want that carrot to kind of have over your head a little bit or in front of you and keep you running towards compliance. And I think with the delivery folks, that's what we're trying to do also. We're trying to get folks to enter in the legal system, and it's going to be a process, and it's all imperfect. But there's a belief and a hope and assumption that they are playing by the rules if they have that temporary state permit, and if they're not, it's going to be problematic when it comes time to review and issue their business operating permit.
Will there be a requirement that they show that everything's been tested through a laboratory and all that kind of fun stuff?
Sure, starting July.
Okay, thank you.
Next question. Will the city permit mixed light facilities?
Will permit what?
Mixed light facilities.
Yes, I wish we have. I don't think we have permitted any yet, but I mean, we are. I believe the planning department is kind of talking internally about kind of the greenhouse concept. I would tell you maybe next month we should have somebody from the planning department here to talk about that if there's a real interest in greenhouses. I will tell you that not everyone is very excited about the full-on greenhouse concept. I think mixed light in terms of a translucent roof on a building, I think is much less problematic. If I was building a big greenhouse right now and was planning that, I would probably go talk to my planner.
See, I mean, that's why I was specific. Mixed light, not greenhouse. Yeah. Totally different.
Yep.
So let me see. Quick question about the CDTFA doing the whole
CDTFA.
Yeah, it's doing the whole price thing and everything. What if you are getting pounds at like $500 a piece? Do you still assume just that 60% markup on that price, or?
Again, it depends if it's a non-arm's length transaction. So if it's an arm's length transaction and you're buying pounds at $500, you can assume a 60% markup rate of that, and so the tax owed on that would be at $800, and so that would be $120.
Okay, and then another question is...
Right? No one else did that math.
So to go along with that, I guess, because, people buying in bulk are obviously going to get better deals than buying 1 pound at a time, right?
Sure.
Is there a limit to how much these people can be, transporting, storing in these facilities? How much weight can you have in one of your facilities? Is there a limit on that?
Such as a delivery-only dispensary?
Sure.
I don't think we haven't quantified that amount. In our code is a provision that says city manager may determine a reasonable. The word is reasonable.
So between these like cultivators, right, who grow thousands of pounds, and a distributor who's going to go pick that up, is it going to come down to reasonable amount? Like if that 1,000 pounds that I'm picking up, is it a reasonable amount for?
Yeah, I think it's going to. I think the word reasonableness in that sense is applied as it relates to the specific business, right? So if I'm a delivery-only dispensary and I have gross receipts of, I don't know, $500,000 a year, it's going to be really hard to explain why I've got like 10,000 pounds of flour in my,
Right.
I've got 3 years worth of product on hand. That's where I think, whereas if I'm a distributor and I'm wholesaling for, 10 cultivators, sure, having thousands of pounds of cannabis on site is probably reasonable.
When it comes to recreational cannabis and the 6 plants, right? I could get 1 ounce per plant, or I can get 10 pounds per plant. Is it going to come down to the same kind of thing? Is there going to be a limit on how much weight I can have in my household?
Well, the daily possession, the personal possession limits are what they are at the state.
1 ounce, right? Outside in the public?
Personal possession limits, yeah.
So inside my own house, if I grow 6 plants that come out to 10 pounds per plant, for example, and I have 60 pounds all of a sudden in my house, am I going to be...
Consult your criminal attorney. No, I don't mean to be. It's a very difficult question to answer. You kind of walk very closely to the Fourth Amendment, right? I'm like, well, okay, it's in your house, right? So, how would one even know that? And I can't. I don't know how to properly answer that question, to be honest.
Thank you.
Don't grow more than 6 plants in your house.
I have a couple questions. The first one was about the payment of the BOP and CUP, if we needed to make a separate appointment for that, if we were to bring certified funds like a cashier's check. Well,
yeah.
I guess same question in both. Do we have to still make a separate appointment in terms of I'm trying to get it all filed here by the end of the month, and I'm wondering if I'm still going to have to file a separate appointment, or if I bring a cashier's check, if I can just leave it with the application.
Yes, the CUP has to be paid at 300 Richards, and it's requested that you would make an appointment to come in and pay your BOP and turn that in.
And the nature of my question is just due to the timeline of trying to make sure it's all in by the end of the month. And I guess my other question you touched on with the micro business at the state level. If I were interested in pursuing that and we're trying to get in a delivery BOP by the end of the month to have non-volatile manufacturing, delivery, and distribution, how would I go about that at the city level?
So it looks like it's going to be 2 different conditional use permits. That is right now where the planning department is. The production CUP that we have does not include retail, right? So the production CUP includes distribution, manufacturing, cultivation, but excludes retail. So it would be, as of right now, it looks like it's going to be a separate CUP, or we're going to develop kind of a micro business conditional use permit that would kind of have both of those.
Okay, I intend on getting both of the CUPs for the property, and I guess my question is more to the BOP nature. Would I request 3 BOPs in distribution, non-volatile manufacturing, and delivery from you, and then a micro business license from the state?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I hope to have the micro business before council, hopefully soon. If we're going in April to committee, maybe by the end of May.
Right, and I guess that's where I'm just trying to figure out in the meantime, if I want to get in before the end of the month and get everything filed, just go and do it separately. And are you guys going to be okay with then us arranging that at a state level as a micro business?
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Okay, and let's see. I guess my other 2 questions were on the non-volatile manufacturing. One of them was relating to the ethanol volume that was touched on earlier. And so is there going to be a cap if we do get the hazardous materials location approval and go through further steps?
Mr. Fire Marshal, is there going to be a cap on the amount of ethanol that one would have? So if it's an H occupancy, there would not be a cap. Hazardous occupancy.
Okay, and I'd heard
how much ethanol are you planning on using, just out of curiosity?
A good amount. No. And I guess then my next question is in terms of post-process solvents. My understanding was that you guys had clarified that the non-volatile was in terms of primary extraction solvents. If we were looking to make distillates and other solvent, in the final product, solvent-free products, are we going to be allowed to use other chemicals in the lab process after the initial extraction?
I believe we attempted to clarify that a few months ago when we did the non-volatile extraction.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, recognizing that there is that solvents are needed in small amounts in some of the, both the cleaning and the post-processing.
Exactly, and that's what I wanted to confirm. Perfect, I appreciate it.
Just don't use butane.
Hi, Graylin Wright, Loader Construction. Jeff Brooks had mentioned that there will be TCOs or phase permits issued for these buildings. First, will a TCO be sufficient for your operating permit?
For a registered cultivator, for example?
Or even for a non-registered cultivator?
Yeah, so if you're non-operating, again, if you're not operating, we are going to begin issuing business permits, and they're going to have some conditions on there like get a building permit, get a certificate of occupancy, and so those are going to start to be coming out this week. For those folks that are operating and going through that process, at the TCO level, we're going to be good issuing the business operating permit.
So with that being the case, having a TCO means that you will be continuing doing construction while they are operating?
Say that again?
The fact that there will be a TCO means that there will be cannabis operations happening while construction is happening. Will there be any requirements on the construction workers? Obviously, we'll try to minimize the access to restricted areas, but will there be anything required by the Office of Cannabis Policy and Enforcement?
Thank you for that.
No problem.
Awesome. One more thing to think about. Really? All right. Probably. I mean, we're going to have to look at like the restricted access areas, and I think, I think having.
So new construction actually has to be completely restricted from an operation, no matter whether it's cannabis or it's a tile company. If you've got new construction going on in that building, that has to be 100% separated for the public safety and your worker safety from the construction zone itself.
But if it's existing,
even if it is 100% separated, you could still have to pass through a restricted area or something similar?
Well, I mean, now you're falling into OSHA.
Okay.
OSHA's rules and regulations, and there's a whole safety guideline between new construction and existing businesses.
Thank you.
Hi, how's it going, Joe? Quick couple questions here. My company right now, we're operating outside of Sacramento, the city, in a county that is allowing still SB 420 co-ops until the sunset period ends. My question is, we are actively searching for buildings and all of that, but are you going to prevent us from delivering in the city, even though we are legal by our county, for still until that sunset period ends? No.
No, as long as you have a valid state temporary permit, you're going to be off of my enforcement radar.
Okay. But it has to be the state temporary permit, not just our seller's permit and articles of incorporation, all of that, which is what is required by our county.
Yeah, but I don't think by the state, though.
Until the sunset period ends, until the end of the year. It's pursuant HSC 11362.775.
I'd have to take a look at it.
Okay. And the next question, we have a few buildings lined up right now. They are going to require the Planning and Design Commission. Do you have a general just approval rating of applications that have to go to that? Because it's rather than one person, right? It's a 9-person panel.
It's worse. Better, I mean. It's 13 people. 13 or 11? Yeah. Yeah, you want me to give the batting average of the Planning Commission? I will tell you that I've been to one hearing that they've had. They upheld the decision of the zoning administrator. However, I think every project that comes before the Planning Commission is going to be treated uniquely and evaluated on its own merits. I don't think applying generalities to the Planning Commission would be. I don't think any safe assumptions as it relates to any hearing body.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm back to my process on the 15% excise.
Love it.
So, yeah. So we're figuring a 60% markup, and it's going to be 15% of what the projected retail price is. Okay. And you said as they get in their information on our returns, then it could go up or it could come down. That's what I got out of it.
Well, I don't know how they're going to calculate it. I don't know if they're going to be using, I don't know what data set that they might consider. But CDTFA has the ability to adjust that every 6 months.
Okay, so in my thinking it through, you used a figure of 2,400. Let's say it goes, somebody gets lucky and they get 500 on the multiple that you've used in your example. Do they pay the 15% on the 500 because they're paying up front to the distributor, if I understood it?
No, so if you purchase something for $500 from a distributor, and that includes
No, we're still buying at the price you set. Let's see, I've got it wrong. 5,000 is what I wanted to say. In your scenario, you said they bought it for a figure below 2,400. 60% markup got them to the 2,400. Let's say they sell it for 3,500, the same quantity, and they retail it all for 3,500. Do they pay the 15% on the 3,500 or on the projected 60% markup 2,400?
That depends if it's an arm's length or a non-arm's length transaction. So the 15% is applied to the retail purchase price if it is a non-arm's length transaction.
But you're paying it in advance, correct?
Well, not in a non-arm's length transaction. In a non-arm's length transaction, you have 90 days to remit that amount to CDTFA. Uh-oh. Hold on. Kimberly's going to correct me. Oh. There was a 90% chance that was about to happen.
No, I just want to invite everyone to the California Cannabis Industry Association reception this evening to hobnob with some legislators and tell them all the problems that Joe can't fix, somebody else can. So it's at 7 p.m. tonight at the 1010 room, which is 1010 10th Street, California Cannabis Industry Association. Everyone should come. Okay. Thank you.
All right, there's your PSA for the evening.
Hi, I just had a question about laboratories.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't be in residences. No. Okay. And then as far as taxes go, the 4% applies to laboratories, but the 15% excise tax, does that?
Well, you're not. No, because you're not purchasing any of the cannabis.
Okay, and then if I were to vertically integrate like another level of, I guess, the cannabis life cycle,
Then you better not be testing. It better not be one of them because you can't.
you can't test and.
I mean, you could grow your own and test it for your own purposes, but you can't be a testing laboratory and own any part of the other industry. So you can't do cultivation, manufacture, and nothing.
Thanks.
It's kind of like one of those checks and balances of the supply chain.
Thank you.
Hey, so I'm anticipating having to get an extension on my temporary state license. Is there anything that we need to do with you guys in order to coordinate with the state for that? Or just work with them on getting the extension? What's some of the holdups are?
Yeah. So if your temporary state permit is going to expire or kind of nearing expiration, deal with the state, get everything through with them, and we'll sort it out on our end, just as we did with getting the temporary. Yes, sir.
Okay, I got my question's a little bit off topic, but what about licensing for businesses in order to use? Because I mean, as far as the thing is now, if you want to use it, you got to be in your own residence. But if you're somewhere like maybe a bar or a lounge, are we going to start doing those licenses? Because I know in the Bay Area, they just put out 8 licenses for lounges, but with selling. But
Right.
are we going to do anything as far as just able to say if someone wants to come to your location and
So
use?
on-site consumption, it's only permitted at a dispensary. So kind of it's one of the bigger differences between like California and say Colorado, where they allow on-site consumption, where they're going to allow on-site consumption, but it's not going to take place at a dispensary. It could be at the proverbial yoga room, which I get probably still an email a week about, can I do this at a yoga room? The answer is no, because you're not a dispensary. We're going to be having a conversation with the council about on-site consumption, probably starting in, I don't know, I got to work on the timing, but probably beginning in June, and kind of what that all might encompass. The micro business permit, for example, at the state level comes with the potential for on-site consumption as well as with a dispensary. So we're going to be getting that conversation.
Hold on, let's get you a mic first.
Yeah, I don't think the state's ever going to permit on-site consumption at a bar.
Well, I mean, not necessarily a bar, but to create a lounge where you can do it just for the consumption of cannabis. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't do both either, but just for the license of, hey, there's a lounge and you can go here and you can consume outside of your own residence.
Right now, it has to happen at a dispensary. I won't point out some of the loopholes that I see in the law, but right now it has to happen at a dispensary.
Okay, I mean, it might be something to talk about because, I mean, that's going to be the next phase coming. People are going to want a place to go.
It's going to be an interesting conversation at the council.
Hey, Joe.
Pigeon Racer.
Hey, we're on the date. We're getting our hearing up. So I had a question. So if our conditional use permit is approved and a business operations plan is approved as well, and we have new construction on a totally separate building on the property with the conditional use permit, and we get our BOP that includes our other building, probably with conditions, would we be able to operate in our old structure while the new construction is being completed? If they are completely no adjoining walls, no attachments?
Talk to me afterwards. I think the answer is yes, but let me dig into that a little bit more. I think the answer is yes.
Joe, just to piggyback real quick off one of my last questions, because we've had 4 investors pull out now because of this, because of the changing windows, the end of February, now the 31st of March. If we do go to planning and design, and ultimately, I know they're saying it's going to take, 8-9 months to hear anything from it? Either way.
Is that what they told you?
That's what I'm hearing, but it could have changed.
So I would ask planning department that window did go from 4 months up to a ridiculous amount of time, mostly because there was a flood of applications. They were working through them, and also at the beginning, they didn't know what they were evaluating. So they received a number of applications that they basically kind of were figuring out what they were going to do with and how to evaluate them for a couple of months. And so that timeline for processing has shortened. I couldn't tell you exactly what it is right now, but
So when it does come through, if it's denied, and at this point, as soon as you get your Z number, you can go get your BOP and all of that. What happens at that point? Do we appeal, or what are our options? And this is mostly for our investors, because
so there's an appeal, and if you have a hearing at the Planning Commission, your appeal is before these folks that sit behind me.
Oh.
So.
Okay. And that's your chances at that point are.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think if my, 2 cents of just advice is, I think it's, not a bad thing for the council members districts that you're operating in and know you, kind of understand what you're doing and how you're doing it and why you're a professional and how you're going to go about operating and how you're going to positively impact their neighborhood and not negatively impact their neighborhood. So whether or not, a vote at the, a down vote at the Planning Commission is the death knell, but I don't know. But ultimately those appeals are heard by the city council and mayor. But as a whole, I think it's a good idea don't be afraid of talking to your council member. I think it's a good thing as a whole.
Thank you.
So the state says we can operate when we're in good standing with the city. In some places, like, for example, in Eureka, there's a particular operator, they had their CUP application in, their BOP application in. That meant they were in good standing with their municipality. They can go ahead and work. So CUP in, BOP in, do they both have to be approved before we can start doing what we need to do, before we can start producing? Are we good? Are we in good standing with the city if those things are in? Or do all those things have to be approved before you say we're in good standing and now we can apply it for the state?
Well, we've created a registry for cultivation and for delivery.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're manufacturing.
Manufacturing. You need to get your conditional use permit. You need to make sure that you have your building permit, that your work is done up to code, that the fire marshal has seen and approved your extraction plans, and then you'll get your business operating permit.
Okay, so but the BOP has to completely go through before you'll say yes, you're all good for the state. Because some other municipalities are like, well, you got it in process, you're all good. So then they can go to the state and get their licensing. So my boss was just wondering.
If you have submitted your conditional use permit and your business operations permit, you are in good standing with the city of Sacramento.
So just submitted?
You can apply to the state.
Thank you, Jill.
Look, I'm dancing on a pinhead up here sometimes.
All right. So again, depending on the 10th, how would that affect the temporary application for transport only?
Say the first part of that again.
Based on if it's approved for transport only to not have a CUP?
How would it affect the timing of that?
No, just the temporary application, because I think the temporary application is given at time of application for CUP.
So provided that the council adopts a transportation only permit, our process would be confirming that your zoning was accurate and you're in a place that you could do this, pending that check, and at least a review that your business applications permit is complete. We would communicate that to the state if it was requested upon us, and then it would just be the processing of the BOP.
And maybe this is just my lack of knowledge on the BOP, but aren't the building improvements and the building permit associated with the CUP? So are there still going to be building requirements for a transport only?
There are going to, depends on what you're doing inside the
I mean, we're just storing vehicles.
just depends on what's in there and what needs to be done to the building.
I guess when is because as far as I knew, the inspections were all done during the CEP process. So when are those going to take place now?
Well, you're still going to be required to get a building permit for any work that needs to happen.
Okay.
Right?
And
So
that was, I guess,
that process isn't connected to the conditional use permit process. That's just a building permit process.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess wait for April 10th, and then we'll see if we're able to operate within a short period of then. And then how long does that process shorten down to?
If it's approved April 10th, we'll probably be at council end of the month, first week in May.
Okay.
For adoption.
Okay. And then.
And then it has to go to PDC, Planning and Design Commission, that 13-member body. So. I don't know, early May, mid-May.
And by then, they should also, I'm guessing, have the changes for the regulations on the building as well for the transport only.
Well, those could be taken care of potentially. I mean, the planning and building department has that information now. I mean,
right.
If
I just wonder if it's going to change because you guys are going to be.
No, the building
transport
code the building code requirements and what you're required to do into the internal structure of the building isn't going to change.
Right.
It's going to be dependent upon like the layout of the building and what you want to do inside of it and what was the previous use of the building, and that's not going to change whether or not you're required to get a CUP or not.
Okay.
CUP is an additional land use entitlement that is attached to the physical property.
And the CUP also requires the consent of ownership, correct?
Correct.
So does that remove that? And now we can go to a building where we don't need consent of ownership and square footage is prices jacked up?
I don't know. Captain, does anybody know if the building permit requires... Do you know if building permit requires owner's consent? Yes.
All right.
So you still need the owner's.
Cool.
A-OK.
Thank you.
Will you still get through every application that gets applied? Will you get to every application that gets? Is it registry or it's not even? The deadline is that a registry?
That's only for delivery only.
Oh, what about cultivation? Does it matter when you apply? You'll always look at it?
Yeah.
There's no deadline? All right. Great.
Anybody else have any questions?
In the back.
Three quick questions. The first one, is the CUP actually attached to the building or the business?
The property, the physical property. So it's literally a land use entitlement. So it runs and stays with the building and the parcel.
Okay, and then the second question is for the fee structure, do you pay the entire amount for the CUP and the BOP, or is there an application fee that you pay? Because you can't get the BOP isn't approved until the CUP is, correct?
Correct. You can submit them simultaneously. You can submit them sequentially.
And do you pay the entire fees, or is there just an application fee to submit them?
I think for us, it's the whole fee. About the conditional use permit, I'm not sure if they have like an application fee and like a review fee that comes along with that. Again, Jeff just left.
Okay, and then
someone might be able to answer that. Someone's has obtained a CUP in here. It's just been a long time since I've gotten a CUP for anything.
Maybe.
You know? Or do you have a question?
And then the last question is so what's happening in regards to special permits? Because there are a lot of differentiating factors between special events and on-site consumption, and we know that there are amendments on the state level to remove special events from just fairgrounds or that interpretation. So with the passage of 64 and there now being clear-cut penalties for individuals consuming in public, is there any movement on the city level to actually allow special events to happen, at least in compliance with the city?
Yeah, so, well, we're going to be having that discussion coming up. We're actually taking a resolution to, is it the Lawn Ledge? Or did we already do that? I can't remember, Lawn Ledge on the 10th to allow special events at that are permitted under state law, i.e. at the fairgrounds, which if you actually read it closely, it actually says county fairs or agricultural events, not county fairgrounds. So technically, they're interpreting it as fairgrounds, but literally it actually means county fair. Right?
But actually, if you look at the verbiage, it doesn't say that it can only be held there. So they're interpreting it very awkwardly.
No, it says at county fairs or agricultural events. That's literally the language.
But
And
the
so
word
if the
only-
county fair was, I mean, literally interpreted, if the county fair was at Chavez Park, the city could permit it at Chavez Park. But the state is interpreting it as to mean county fairgrounds, which was the intent, I believe, of the legislature when they adopted it. And so we're moving forward with a resolution that would allow us to authorize special events that take place at our county fairgrounds, which is Cal Expo. And there's in fact one being planned. Has anybody heard the rumor?
No.
No. All right, let me spread it. High times. In May.
Hi, Joe. In order to add a nursery to a CUP for cultivation, the Class C, would that be a minor modification, or how would we go about doing that?
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. If you have a cultivation CUP, you just need to apply for the nursery permit because the cultivation CUP doesn't specify the amount of canopy. And so you just need that Class A nursery permit from us.
Okay, and then one more question. For the annual licenses, if we have our CUP and BOP in, we shouldn't have an issue applying for the annual license with the city with getting local authorization?
Yeah, and you're a cultivator?
Cultivation, distribution, and dispensary.
Okay. Yeah, you shouldn't have, if you have all of your permits in with us, you should not have any issues with the state.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, and we're proceeding under that, ultimately because the dual permit is ultimately required, right? So if you fall out of our good graces, it doesn't matter if you have a state permit or not.
I had a quick follow-up question to the solvent question as well as the event planner license. I was curious if that required its own separate space or if we could locate that within our micro business.
An event planner?
Right, there's the state event planner license for, I believe, 10 events or less or 10 events or more. There's two separate licenses.
I gotta go look at it. I don't think, you're just planning events.
Well, right, I
Yeah.
don't think it would be covered by a micro, but do we have to say have a separate space in the building or could we have an
I don't think
office
so.
inside the micro business?
I think you just do it in an office. Unless your event planning requires, like you personally hand rolling a bunch of product.
Well, right, and we'll have the production CUP and the non-storefront delivery CUP in place. I'm just kind of curious in terms of how we break it up with the architect breaking the space
Bye,
up.
Sophia. I don't think you need a conditional use, a separate CUP, or even a separate business operations permit for planning events. You eventually will need the permit itself for the event. But otherwise, it's really not really a cannabis. It's not an activity that requires you to hold or possess product.
Right, right. And then my other question about the solvent use and the H occupancy. In terms of the occupancy, is that the current use of the building is not the base zoning? Is that correct?
Say that one more time.
Is the current use of the space not the base zoning of the property in terms of the H occupancy for having large amounts of solvents? Okay, and is it possible to change the use to an H use if it's a industrial building?
Yes, as long as if you change the use of the building, as long as it meets the code requirements of an H occupancy, that's absolutely fine. So you just have to meet all those requirements of the building code.
And then all the solvent volumes and everything would be back to the Chapter 3 of the California Building Code?
That's correct.
Okay.
So all
Perfect. Now I understand.
Okay, quick time check. We have 5 minutes left, so.
I just want to check up on the latest with the metric, kind of track to trace, whatever. Is it still kind of all year? Is it? What's going on with it?
You guys have as good as intel as I do. It's supposed to be in place July 1. We'll see how that happens. I'm not super confident about it being rolled out between now and June, but we shall see.
And then just one more quick question. You said the waiver of requirement for the CUP for cultivators for their self-distribution, so meaning they won't have to go through a CUP process at all?
So, hold on. I don't even think I understood the question. Push your button.
So the self-distribution, if you're a small manufacturer and you want to add self-distribution to your operation, then we won't require you a CUP for that because you don't have one under your small manufacturing operation.
Yeah, so if you're a small manufacturer with gross receipts of less than $100,000, you are not required to obtain a conditional use permit. Under that model, if you wish to self-distribute, we're also not going to require that you obtain a conditional use permit to perform self-distribution.
You said if you're a manufacturer under?
With gross receipts of less than $100,000. That is the only exemption of the CUP for a cannabis business.
Thank you.
My question kind of ties in with that. So if I got the CUP for the cultivation and I wanted to just add the manufacturing, the tiered manufacturing low, I automatically get the self-distribution tied to that. So I get 3 just for doing the one add-on. Yeah. If I had the manufacturing, I get the self-distribution automatically grandfathered into that, or
if your manufacturing is with gross receipts of less than $100,000,
it'll be the portion of the business that won't be the entire business. Will bring in under 100,000. If it's this manufacturing from the material that's on the site, that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess there's a scenario in which that happens.
So,
if you already have a CUP for cultivation, it's probably just easier since it's cultivation, manufacturing, distribution are allowed under the CUP that you already have. Just go in and amend it, and then you don't have to worry about gross receipts or anything like that.
So that's the next question I was going to say. Is it considered a modification fee instead of a whole new broken up?
No, it's just a modification.
So there's no modification fee involved with that? And if you go to the site, if you pull off the CUP.
I think it's like $1,000.
$1,000, right?
There you go. Sounds like someone who's done it.
All right. That's it. Thanks.
So if you have a micro business, do you just pay the 4% tax one time between everybody as part of the chain?
Yeah. Suspect we might have a micro business or two popping up when it's allowed. The taxation is real, I get it. I'm going to look into Randy's question about can it be adjusted, and maybe do we want to adjust it, for distributors? Because the scale on distribution just gets crazy.
Oh, by the way, we have a Facebook. Forgot. Everyone's gone, but.
Everyone's gone. All right, going once. I'll hang out.
Last question.
I'll hang out. Thank you, everyone.
County. You worked on county at all? Sacramento County?
Have I worked on them?
Are we allowed to grow commercially out there?
No, you can do 6 plants, I think, inside for the county.
Just anywhere residential. What about real in the commercial warehouse?
They don't have any commercial cannabis.
You're not working on that at all?